Thanks, Kate. Thanks for everyone's service tonight. I'm just going to zoom in a bit because I haven't got my glasses. The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defence against the first drink. Thanks for letting me read.
Thank you, Laura. Whether you're new to CA, a regular member, or back from a relapse, you are all very welcome here. Some suggestions which were made to us when we first came to CA were to attend as many meetings as possible in our early days, try to listen to the similarities and not the differences in what is being shared, take numbers of recovering and recovered addicts and actually call them. Most importantly, get a sponsor. That's someone who's been through the programme, as outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and to work the 12 steps. The format of this meeting is that we have asked CATH to choose a section from the Big Books of AA, which will be read out by...
Thank you, Kate. This is a shared choice. My name's Ryan, I'm a recovered addict. And but my friend sat before me and he made the point-blank declaration that God had done for him what he could not do for himself. His human will had failed. Doctors had pronounced him incurable. Society was about to lock him up. Like myself, he admitted complete defeat. Then he had, in effect, had been raised from the dead, suddenly taken from a scrap heap to a level of life better than the best he'd ever known. Had this power originated in him? Obviously, it had not. There had been no more power in him than there was in me at that minute, but this was none at all. That floored me. It began to look as though religious people were right after all. Here was something at work in a human heart which had done the impossible. My ideas about miracles were drastically revised right then. Never mind the musty past. Here sat a miracle directly across the kitchen table. He shouted great tidings. I saw that my friend was much more inwardly reorganised. He was on a different footing. His roots grasped a new soil. Thank you for letting me read.
Thank you, Ryan. Kath, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Hi everyone, I'm Kath, I'm a recovered addict. My roots grasp new soil today and excuse me, as I said in the reading before, today I have a mental defence against the first drink or first use up, and thank you for inviting me along to be of service tonight. And my only aim now is to be useful, and it's lovely to be at a newcomers meeting, and I hope there are people here who are new and or people who are struggling, and that, like I say, my only purpose is to be here and to hopefully carry a message. And sat here at my own table, shouting glad tidings, that if you are here, you struck gold, really. There's a solution in these rooms and these Zooms of Cocaine Anonymous, for me. So really, before I can go into the solution, I have to go into the problem, really, and what the problem was. And what the problem will always be is me. I am my own problem. Took me such a long time to know that. Such a long time, because I grew up thinking that, that I deserved better. I had this sort of sense of entitlement. And, for me, my story doesn't start with darkness and alcoholic parents and violence and stuff like that. And if yours does, that's your story. But the reason I share my story in that way is because this doesn't discriminate. This illness does not discriminate. It doesn't care whether you're born in a castle or a cardboard box. It doesn't care. If you've got this, you've got this. And I say I came from a very normal family. I come from hard-working parents. My mum was a nurse and my dad was a driving instructor, and very hard-working people. And I've got 3 brothers, and what happened when I was a child was they instilled morals into us and values and principles. That if you work hard in life, you'll get where you need to go. The reward from hard work will be wonderful. It's reward in all of that sort of stuff. But you know what? As this selfish little child, I used to think, I don't want to work hard for things. I want things now. And if I can find a way to get them, I'm going to get them. I was very, very willful as a child. And one of the first things that I, I sort of was attracted to was shiny things. I liked shiny things. I liked nice pens. I liked paper. I liked anything that shined, really. Anything that I could steal. I was a little thief as a child. I loved that sense of ease and comfort that I got of getting these things. It took the edge off being me, because the truth was I was very frightened, but I didn't know it was fear. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I just knew that I was always thinking. I was always worried. I suffered with that impending doom that we read about, even as a child. It's coming up to Christmas time, and I remember as a child, like waiting all year for Christmas, and then when it came, it was just not good enough. Nothing was ever good enough for me. I always thought that something bad was going to happen. And like I say, I come from a normal, happy family. It was me. I was maladjusted before I even became powerless. That is my truth. I was maladjusted, unmanageable before I even became powerless. And the reason I say that is because this is an internal condition. I suffer with an internal condition. And like I say, even as a child, all of that fear, the anxiety, the worry about what are you thinking about me? Sitting there in school thinking, what do people think about me? Frightened of being too clever, frightened of being stupid, frightened of being good at sport in case people thought, oh, who does she think she is? I was the sort of child that had to stand outside a door and take a deep breath before I entered into a room, because I was so consumed by self-centered fear was all over me. But I didn't have any names for this as a child. I just knew that it didn't feel quite right. And I could be in my family and they would be laughing and joking, and I'd be sat there in resentment. I was resentful of my mum. I thought she loved my brothers more than me. I was resentful of families who didn't have as many children in them, because I used to think, well, I'd like to be an only child, because if I was an only child, I'd have more stuff, more shiny things, and all of this. And, for me, by the time I was 12 years old, I'd started to experiment, Like I say, I didn't want to work hard. I didn't want a job where I worked hard and saved up. I thought that was for mugs. I thought that was something that, that idiots did, really. Like my parents. That's how entitled I was and how, self-righteous I was. I was looking down on my own mum. She didn't dress well enough for me. She was embarrassing. This is all the things that separate me. That judgment separates me from other people. And you may be looking at me thinking, what's that got to do with drinks and drinking drugs? Well, for me, it's got a lot to do with it, because that separation was there for a very long time. Like I say, I was separate from myself, from a higher power, and from you guys from a very young age. And, by the time I was 12, I'd started drinking. And by the time I was 13, I'd started smoking weed. And, the progression was there, 15, snorting speed. And for me, I just liked things that made me feel, I don't know, better. I wasn't using to enhance the way I felt. I was using to change the way that I felt. It was a really strong distinction, I wasn't using just so I could go and have a nice time and feel good. I was using so that I could fit in, so that I could feel like at one with people. And then just after my 16th birthday, my parents had divorced and heroin came into my life. And the thing about Cocaine Anonymous is I love it so much, honestly, because I recovered from a book called The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm in a fellowship called Cocaine Anonymous, and I'm a heroin addict. I was a heroin and a crack addict, prescription drugs, all of that. Alcohol and snorting cocaine weren't my thing. That's what I love about our fellowship. It is so inclusive. It's so inclusive, and that's why I share about my internal condition. Because like I say, when I was 16, and the first time I tried heroin, it just fit me like a glove. It did for me what I couldn't do for myself. It gave me that sense of ease and comfort that I didn't get from life. I didn't know how to do life. Life was a puzzle to me. I remember as a kid, my mum could say, we're going to have a party or something like that. And she'd change her clothes put stuff in the oven, and suddenly she'd be in a party mood. I never knew how to do that without substances. I never knew how to just have this ease and comfort. And after 16, like I say, I found heroin, and I think even by the time I was 17, I'd made a decision. You know, I'd made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the power of this powder, because it made me feel whole. You know, it's hard for me to say that it didn't do that for me, because it did. You know, at first it did do that for me, and then, you know, the thing was that it was a very cruel master. You know, because the more I gave, the more it wanted. And by the time I was like late 18, I was pregnant with my boyfriend. I'd been kicked out the family home because I couldn't be trusted there anymore. You know, I remember my mum taking me to doctors, and I remember my mum, you know, all the frothy emotional appeal. Because, like I say, I come from a normal family, and you know, just regular folk, and you know, it was in the 80s, and heroin had only just come on the scene, and I remember my mum used to look at me and say, "I don't know where I got you from. I don't know where you've come from." You know, with real real concern, she used to look at me. You know, my dad would cry at times, and they just were so worried for me. But that frothy emotional appeal, I had no power even then. But I'd say it when I was with them. You know, I'd say, "Yeah, I promise I'm not going to do it anymore. I promise I'm going to stop now." And I meant it. But the minute I left that room, or the minute I left that house, it was all over me. You know, I had no mental defense at all. And you know, I was 18, I was pregnant, and you know, my partner, he had a good job. You know, he had prospects. He had a career ahead of him, and you know, we were only, like say, he was 19 by then, and I was 18, and we settled down. We bought a house, and you know, the truth was that it was all built on sand, because as much as we tried to build this bright outlook for ourselves, we were addicts. We were both drug addicts, and all we wanted to do really was to use. You know, it was such a struggle, and even at a young age, like I say, not knowing what was wrong with me, not knowing why I couldn't stop. You know, and I went like this for years and years and years. We both did, and you know, after 10 years together, I turned around and I had this moment, this flash of inspiration, where I suddenly thought, I remember it now, where I thought, you know what, I was all right till I met you. This is how deluded I was. I actually thought that it wasn't me, it was him. You know, that old addict thing, it's not me, it's you. You know, I'll be fine once I leave. I left, and I tried to build up another bright outlook for myself, you know, going to college and trying to get a life, and, you know, being a good mum and all of that sort of stuff. But all I really wanted to do was to use drugs. I just liked the way they made me feel, even though my consequences were starting to pile up and I was losing more and more stuff in my life. The pull to use was just too great. You know, I had no mental defense. I'd have arguments in my own mind where I'd start saying, well, I think it's a really good idea to use today. I think that this should be the last time. You know, this will be the last time that we do it, and we won't do it again. And I'd say, oh, okay. Or sometimes, you know, I wouldn't have any thoughts at all. I'd just be doing it. And after many years like this, you know, I reached this point one day. It was the 12th of February 2008, and I just reached this moment where I was using against my own will. And for anyone who's at that point or has been at that point, you know, I'm glad for that. I'm glad that I reached that point where I was crying as I was using. So glad for that, because there's no way I could lie to myself after that I had a choice in this. My body was loading up a crack pipe as I was crying, you know, because I was having massive panic attacks near the end of my using, and it was just horrendous. But what had happened is, as soon as the panic attacks started to subside, my head would start again. You'll be all right this time. Just have another one. It'll be okay. Change the ash, change the foil, whatever it may be, you know, use a different substance. It didn't matter really. I always had to have drugs, always. And like I said, I'd have these massive panic attacks where I actually thought I was going to die. And then I'd use again as soon as they subsided. You know, that was my story for 8 years. The last 8 years of my serious addiction, There was no fun, absolutely no fun. I was living to use and using to live. I was living in a house with it was just like there was no love there. There was no warmth. There was no light. It was just dark. I lived a very dark existence at the end, and like I say, I cried out this night and said, if there's anything there, please help me, because I don't want to go on like this. And I think what happens is when you concede to your innermost self, or for me, things started changing. Like people started being put in my path, people who could help me. And I didn't know anything, if I'm honest. I was just absolutely oblivious. But I'd always had a drug worker, I'd been on methadone since I was like 20. And I'd always gone to the doctors and they'd said, how are you getting on? And I'd say, I'm doing fine. Yeah, everything's fine. And they'd give me a script and they'd say, we'll see you in a month. Now, after I'd cried out this time, I went to the doctors and they said, you've got a new worker now, Kath. There's a new guy who's going to take care of you, give you your scripts and stuff. And I didn't know, but he was one of us. I had no clue. And this man sat opposite me across the table in a doctor's. And he said to me, what do you want from your life? What is it that you want? I said, I no one had ever asked me that before. I said, I don't know. And he started to, like you said at the beginning of the meeting about the carry a message of hope. This guy, he started to carry a message of hope to me before I'd even heard of Cocaine Anonymous, before I'd even heard of the steps or been to a meeting. This man said to me, I can help you. If you want to get off your script, I can help you. And he did. And on the 9th of November 2012, I came to my very first Cocaine Anonymous meeting. I was 1 day clean. For the first time in 28 years, I was 1 day clean. And it wasn't a pretty sight. I was sweaty. I hadn't slept for weeks and weeks as I came on the detox. I was a mess. The fear was all over me, the guilt, shame, remorse. For anyone who's tried to sleep filled with guilt, shame and remorse, it's horrendous, isn't it? And put on top of that a rattle, all of this stuff. It was just horrendous. And I came to Cocaine Anonymous, and this room was just filled with people, and I didn't really know what they were saying, but I didn't know they were quoting the book and stuff. But all I knew was that what they were saying, I related to. They were speaking to me. They were talking about this fear, this self-centered fear, this selfishness, living the way that I'd lived, this dishonest life where I just always choose to lie. I always chose to lie. I don't know why. It's just part of my makeup, choose a lie instead of the truth. And, and I started to go back to this meeting. I remember going out that meeting. Like I say, I was 1 day clean. And as I went down the steps of that building, I thought, I can't wait to go back there next week. I didn't know there was lots of meetings. I thought, this man had taken me to this one meeting. And I thought this was the only one. It was a Friday night. It was 6 o'clock. It was in Liverpool city centre. And I thought, I can't wait to go back there. And I went home that night and I was lying in bed and I could hear all the shares, in my mind. I could hear the things people had said. That's an amazing feeling, isn't it? When you go home and you're just like, remember when he said that and when she said that. And, I went back and I kept coming back and I got a sponsor. I saw a lady who had what I wanted. She just walked into the room. She just had confidence. She just shared from her heart. She had peace. There was a serenity about her. And I desperately needed that. Desperately needed it and wanted it with all my heart. And I went through this program as if like my life depended on it, because it did. It still does today. I have no illusion that if I stop doing this stuff, I'll be fine. Because I wasn't fine before I got into drugs. So why would I be fine if I just stopped doing this? And like I say, I went through the steps and I had a real experience. Wasn't always easy. It was painful a lot of the times. When some people say that they come out their step 5 and they floated, I didn't float anywhere. I felt horrendous. After my step 5, I felt horrendous. I went home that Friday and I didn't get out of bed till the Sunday. And I felt absolutely hideous. I felt like, look what you've done. to people who love you. But that gave me the power to go and make my amends. And, you know, I got to make amends to my family, to my daughter, my precious daughter, you know, my mum, my dad, my neighbours, everybody, you know. And the truth is, you know, I have lost people in recovery. I've lost loved ones. You know, my brother died last year of alcoholism. He never wanted what I've got today. He never wanted recovery. You know, this June just gone, my daughter's dad passed away through alcoholism. I was able to be there for him as a friend because of this process and because of these steps. When I made amends to him about 5 years ago, I didn't just make amends and then never speak to him again. I was consistent in his life. I would check in on him. I would see if he was okay. Did he need anything? I was a friend. I would listen to him. I wouldn't judge him and say, you need to do this, Peter, you need to. He didn't want to get into recovery. And that's okay. And that's admitting my own powerlessness over my own family, you know. And this program, honestly, is giving me, we say a life beyond our wildest dreams, but just to be able to get up each day and to be useful and to have a God in my life who loves me and cares for me. Like I say, this program didn't promise me. When I sat down in 2012 with my sponsor and you know, I started this work, she didn't say to me, you know what, Kath, you are never going to know a bad day again. You're never going to know a sad day. You'll always be happy. She never said that. What she said was, if you do this program and you give it your all, even on those days, those lowest days, you will not need to use. You will not need to use because you will have a mental defense against that, because you will know the truth about yourself. And the reason that we have to go through, well, I have to go through this program was so that I can stay in fit spiritual condition. Because without that, if I start being dishonest again, start being selfish, start being fearful, it's like putting bricks inside myself in my stomach. So it blocks me off from my moral compass. It blocks me off from my God consciousness. And I can't just live in my own brain again. It's not a good place, you know. I have the most amazing life today. I have the most amazing experiences. And, you know, the most important thing about all of that is being consistent, showing up each day, even when your head's saying, oh, you don't need to do that, or what's the point in that, or just have a day off, you know, things like that. Because I heard someone say, I don't know who it was, I can't remember, but someone said a while ago, and it stuck with me, that voice in my head is the last person I used with. You know, that little voice that tells me I don't need to try, or you can just have a day off, or just lie about something or whatever. That's the last person I used with. And the difference today is that I don't listen to that voice. I have a power in my life, you know, I have a voice that's more wholesome than that, you know, that's more caring and kind. And like I say, you know, going through this program, it's not something that you do and you get to the end and you just stop. It wasn't for me, and I hope that I'll always feel this way. Yeah, so thank you for letting me come along tonight. It's been an absolute honour, and I hope if there's anybody new who is struggling, you know, just reach out. There's loads of people on here who can help, absolutely loads. So thank you, and God bless.